Ainmneacha, honnig me too ag tuairt lecht in san Culturland. An bhí honnig me tú bhí te caint fao na broga.
Well, I my hugget.
Ita mai, fair mai hu.
Fi chittabog jacker, or vi make canch. Vi make swing erna dini.
No, so gum take him Dutch, but you go shaking your gur to land mochahan agus tu smínture in the dini. No, vi in the broga vi should land vi holla to honnig me agus holla me in mochahan sin, but rent van job.
Well, I made my huggets.
Yeah, my
There's Anne also.
Hello, Anne. My who? Falchero to Rash.
Oh, sure.
Oh, Tommy, you're going to give us a tune. My who? My who?
Apply one part. Apply one part right there. I'm trying to make about 20 of these for the schools.
Oh, beautiful. Tommy makes, for anybody who doesn't know, Tommy makes harps. So this is his own harp that he's made.
Wow.
Beautiful. Okay.
Grania.
Grania. My Grania. Falchero to start.
Okay, it's 4 past.
Okay, Beju Gugurmich Tush.
Dane.
Okay, so a carja Falchero to start. Benvenuti a tutti. Ahasoran Shiva Eka. We're so pleased to see you. Shaw and Dara Kionda na Hamakti ta Agriha ega Aris Egg Sharon. This is the second event that Aris Egg Sharon has organized to celebrate Shachtan the Gaeilge as well as St. Patrick's Day. Salvatore, Cadavis Ogin, Salvatore got into doing Cadavis Ogin enough. Salvatore is going to tell us what's happening tonight.
Terug on Sumula Nocta Kira, Machine Doire Cholmcille, Bailin Risteard Mac Gabhann, I was Tourish Intreoir doing Ainmneacha, I was Sloinnte Gaeilge.
Oh, so an introduction to Irish names and surnames. So
I was is far acadúil Risteard, scríbneoir, I was far gnímh sonna Gaeilge. Risteard is an academic, he's a writer, and is an Irish language activist. I was tamuich kinche go manishiv sultmore asunihe. So we are sure that you will greatly enjoy this evening. Morshin, Risteard.
all right, later, Risteard.
Reminder. Now, how do I get?
Let's go to the. Let's see, Daddy. Go. She is like Rin does the Skyland. Shanae. She's in Gaeilge.
Right.
August. Okay. Bomish. Oh, Shanae. Shanae. August or Ryland. Okay.
Well, tá bagan Ainmneacha manis a bheith as cór scafte comór agus daoine beidir a bhfuil an tower canse seo cailmheach acu ach dhéanam me díhil dhéanamh go soilear agus go simplí agus is féidir liom. Thank you very much for joining us tonight. I hope you find what I have to say about Irish personal names and surnames of interest to you. It's quite a complex subject. It's a subject that there's quite a lot of work still needed to be done on it for the story to be complete. But there's a fair amount of information already available, and my talk is going to be based on that sort of information. First, before I begin, I just mention the sources of information that are available, or the most significant ones that are available at the moment. And can you see that one. It's a book on Irish personal names, and it deals with, for the most part, names that have quite a strong pedigree in Irish society, going back, some of them going back not only to Irish Gaelic, the Irish Gaelic world, but to the Celtic world on the continent. And I'll kind of make reference to some of those things in the course of my presentation. So that's one very important source of information about it. By the way, I'll finish off tonight with a list of these books. I'm just explaining to you what sources are available at the moment. Second one is by far the most comprehensive. It's called Irish Surnames, written by a man called Sean de Wolfe, who is descendant of probably the pioneer scholar on Irish family names and Irish personal names. And he's produced an updated version of his granduncle's initial work. So that's a second book. And the third one is probably the most conveniently got. It's the Surnames of Ireland by the father figure of the study of Irish names, Edward McGlysett. So those the information about those books will be available on the last screen of my presentation. Now, I have broken up the sections into original names and borrowed names, names that have entered the world of Irish names from other sources. But one obvious one would be biblical sources, for example, but biblical and scholarly Latin sources. So that's for the personal names. Then after that, there's the family names, the surnames, and I kind of divided the presentation along those lines. Now, as I said, a lot of the screens that you'll be looking at contain quite a lot of names. And realistically, I'm not going to be able to cover each individual name because it would take us until this time tomorrow night to get finished. And I'm conscious of the fact that I have just within an hour to do the presentation. So what I'm proposing to do is to take samples of the songs from each category that I'll be covering and discuss them, hopefully providing some reasonable representation of the issues involved in each of those sections, and then passing on to the next one. Now, I'll take about 40 minutes to do that, which leaves then some time for questions that perhaps maybe might pick up some of the other names that I have not made any reference to, but are particularly of interest to somebody in the company. Here's the first set. The very first name, you can see AODH, spelled an odd spelling. That's pronounced in two ways in Irish, depending on what part of the country you're living in. In the north, it tends to be pronounced E, AODH, E. And in the south, it tends to be pronounced A, E and A. That's very important because From that name, there derives quite a number of surnames, and the different pronunciations are represented in that variety of surnames. So I just wanted to make that point at the beginning. It's a very ancient name. It's the word itself means fire, and it's actually interestingly cognate with the name of a Celtic tribe in Gaul in modern France, who lived in and around the Paris area of France, called the Aedui, the fire people. A-E-D-U-I, Aedui. So the word E or A has Celtic roots. Quite a number of names are like that. They have quite deep roots that go beyond this island. I'm talking about the island of Ireland, from which I am speaking. The second word on the list is a derivative of the first one, and I suppose it would probably mean little e or a, and that is either can be pronounced Ian, E and An, Ian, or the DH in the middle of a word is normally pronounced like a G in Irish. So it can also be pronounced Egan, Egan. And again, that has implications for surnames. In the north, there's a very common surname, particularly in the northeast corner of Ireland, McGean, which is that word, Mac, and the son of, and Ian. In the south, the name Egan gives us O'Hagan, Egan, ending up as O'Hagan. So it's an interesting example of just the complexity that exists in these names over the centuries. To add further to that complication, there was during the cultural revival, which brought back a lot of these names into popular use. Unfortunately, some of the people who presented them in their writing used antique spellings of the names, and that would have, in Old Irish, would have been spelt the second one would have been spelt A-O-D-A-N. Early Irish tended not to indicate the change of the D with an H. It was just spelt A-O-D-A-N. And people began to pronounce it just as it stood, without having an awareness that that was an instant spelling. And the people that spelt it that way would actually have pronounced it Ethan, or Ian, or Ian. So they now pronounce the name Edan now is quite commonly used and borne by people all over the country, and it's really essentially an incorrect form of the name. That form never existed. It's just the spelling convention of medieval Ireland was different, and it was always pronounced with some kind of variation on the D, but never a hard D done. Anyway, that's just by way of an example of the complication. Another name that I want to draw your attention to is Ainmneacha. A lot of people seem to equate the name Ainmneacha with the biblical Anna, and it's quite a different name. Again, it's an original Celtic name, and it, in all probability, is refers to a sun goddess figure. When you kind of examine the nature of the word itself, it's based on the word an, which exists in modern Irish as an intensifier prefix. Many of you will be familiar with a word like might, good, and white, very good, particularly good. So an has the effect of intensifying the adjective, and that's the root, that's the element that is at the heart of the word Ainmneacha. It's also probably not unrelated to another word in Irish, Fanya. People who are familiar with Irish know that the letter F is a kind of frequently disappearing sound in a word, because when you put as what's called in Irish a shivu on an F, it simply disappears. So Fanya can very easily become Ainmneacha, and those are the kind of the pieces of linguistic information, evidence that kind of point to the fact that Ainmneacha has got something to do with intensity and roundness, and hence the suggestion that the original Ainmneacha of Irish mythology was probably a sun goddess of some sort, Ainmneacha. So, and it's got nothing at all to do with the biblical Anna. As a matter of fact, the Irish for biblical Anna, Saint Anna, is Anna, A-double-N-A, Anna. Ainmneacha predates in Ireland the biblical name. Now let's go to another one. Right down at the bottom here of the first list is the name Arthan. Arth is an ancient word in Irish for bear, and it kind of helps me to make the point that there's a sort of early Irish names. Many of them are associated with animals, maybe in some kind of totemistic way, that it was hoped that the newborn child would adopt whatever admirable quality was associated with the animal. So we have Art, bear, presumably for strength, and other up here is the word Brannigan, and the Irish word for the raven is Bran. The agan is simply a diminutive form it's a suffix that reduces so a young Bran, a young raven, Brannigan. Those are two, but as we move through the list, I'll point out various other words that have the same root in the animal world, and the assumption being that the animal that the child is named after has got some qualities that are valued or by early Irish society. The F at the end that I put in brackets after art in that list simply makes it a smaller, a diminutive. Art, little bear, Arthan, and that's well, we'll talk about this in more depth later on, but that provides quite a common surname, McGarthan, which is particularly common in the north of Ireland. Now, let's go on to the next list. Sorry, hold on. I should, before I leave, I should mention this word here, this name, Gabhann. Just to make the point that the inspiration of these names is kind of quite rangy. Gabhann is a female name, and it's got an interesting association with Derry, the place that I'm speaking from in the north of Ireland, because Gabhann is the first female of Derry to be named in history. In the 11th century, there appears the name Gabhann in the annals of Derry, where a woman who subsequently became the abbess of a nun community within the city, but prior to that became an Ainmneacha, or a steward of church lands, which was a very unusual thing for a charge for a woman to have in those days. So Gabhann was quite a significant figure, and first female from Derry ever mentioned in history, and the first female steward of church lands that known in this, particularly in this area. Gabhann, it's a very pretty name. It's two elements in it. The word bay means a beautiful woman, bay, and the second is bin, B-I-N-N, which means melodious. The beautiful melodious woman is Gabhann. It's interesting to note that the women's centre in Derry, right there in the middle of the city, is known as Gabhann House, in memory of this 11th century Derry woman. Gabhann. Okay. I'm running out of time very rapidly, I see. A very common word, element that you find in many name lists is the word coup, C-U, father, coup. And it's the Irish word for a hound, and probably the most common dog or hound that existed in medieval Ireland would have been the wolfhound. Very a very impressive canine figure that was widely exported, greatly in demand in various parts of the world, and there was a regular trade, something that you probably wouldn't normally associate with those times, but there you are. Dogs were reared and exported because of their strength or their speed or whatever. The trademark of bus Éireann, as many of you will know, is a large red-haired hound, a wolfhound, to the modern bus service in Ireland. Coo, the genitive case of coo is con, C-O-N. So all of these names here, Congal and Connell, are all names that are based on the coo word. The coo, the wolfhound, was a very admired animal in Ireland, and lots of names actually are Connell, very common name in the north of Ireland, particularly in the northwest. Congal is composed of two elements, con or coo, the hound, and gal, which means energy. Congal is Congal is the base of another surname, which we'll be dealing with later on, but McCongal, McGonigal in English. Right. This word, Owen, E-O-G-H-A-N, is another ancient name. It's based on two words, O, E-O, yo, and G-I-N or G-I-N, gin, gan, meaning born of the yew tree. Again, it's this totemistic notion that something of strength and suppleness, as the yew tree, hence Owen. Owen is a very common name in ancient Ireland, and one of the most successful dynasties that existed in Ireland was known as the Kingal Owen, the Owen's kind, and probably the most powerful, certainly northern clan was part of the Kingal Owen, the leading part, in fact, of the Kingal Owen. Two of the most common names in this part of the world is O'Neill and MacLachlan, and both of those clans were part of the Kingal Owen. In other words, they claimed direct descent from this father figure Owen. Right, let's move on again. Here's some examples of the coo word that I mentioned. We have cooey, which has two elements in it. There's my, meaning a plain, and Coo, the hound of the plain, Coo the hound of Ulster, which was also another name that was given to Coo Holland, the famous Ulster hero of Irish mythology. And here's another one, Coo the hound of Meath, which was the fifth province of Ireland. Nowadays, there's only 4 provinces, but originally, as the word in Irish for a province, chuig, indicates there were 5, and the 5th one was now County Meath, Coo. So Coo the hound of Meath. Jarwell has become a fairly fashionable name again in modern Ireland, and 2 elements there is Jar, meaning a daughter of, and File, F-A-F-A-L, which is an ancient alternative name for Ireland, Fal, which you get in the second element of the Fianna Fáil political party, the armies of Ireland, literally is what Fianna Fáil means. And here's a female name based on the same element, Jarvile. A similar name, Darren, the same element, Jar in the front, and the second part of it is Finn. So that Darren is the daughter of Finn. Darren. Very interesting word. Tag, actually quite common again now, but mostly for some reason in the deep south, around Cork, there's a lot of tags. But it was, in medieval Ireland, it was an extremely common name, so common in fact, the tag became the common man name, the name for the common man, just like in English people talk about Jack, like Jack of all trades, Jack. I'm all right, Jack. Tag was like a bit like that. The ordinary man was tag. Although interestingly, the original meaning of tag was poet. Tag was poet, the word for a poet. But in medieval Ireland, it became a very common name indeed all over the land, so much so that it became the common word for the common Irishman, the ordinary Irishman. Tag, and you find it in phrases like tag and da heave in Irish, tag of the 2 sides, the fella that never gets down off the hedge to throw on his lot with one side or the other is the 2-sided tag. Very ironically, the word that you find in the speech of loyalist East Ulster for a Catholic is tag, and that harkens right back to medieval Gaelic Ireland. That use, it's kind of very ironic that that people that have got a lot of antipathy towards things Irish, are the only people that retain that understanding of this word tag, that is the common man in Ireland. Tag. Another interesting historical word is this one here, tuachal. Tuachal. Or tuachalan would be a diminutive of it, sort of a pet form. But the original tuachal is derived from the word tuach, T-U-A-T-H. And as many of you will know, the word tuach in modern Irish means the countryside. The Gaeilge faoin tuach, you say, going out into the country, around the countryside. Tuach. But it originally meant the people of the land, the actual people who lived in it, rather than, and in that way, it's probably cognate with the Germanic word chut, chutones. It's probably the same element. So it's, I haven't actually gone into this in any great depth, but I'm going to chance my arm here and suggest that it may actually ultimately be an Indo-European term that is shared by the Germanic languages as well as the Celtic languages. But Tua originally meant people, the people. And there's a great ancient proverb in Irish which rings with modernity, although it was written clearly a long time ago, and it uses Tua in that ancient sense of people, and it also uses a word that doesn't exist in modern Irish for Lord, and that is Tria, T-R-I-A-T-H, Tria. And the proverb is Trisha Tua na Tria, which translates, the people are stronger than the Lord. The earthly Lord I'm talking about now. Is Trisha Tua na Tria. Now that's, you couldn't find a more modern concept of political, progressive political thinking than what's contained in that very ancient proverb. Is Trisha Tua na Tria. People are stronger than the Lord. An interesting, I'm kind of realizing I'm running out of time here, but there's an interesting story that I encountered on a visit one time to a media center in the island of Uist, one of the heartlands of Gaelic Scotland, of Gaelic Scotland. And in this media center, which was opened by Prince Charles, the king in waiting in Britain, he was a comparatively young man at the time when this happened, because it wasn't today or yesterday that this media center was opened. But there's a plaque in Gaelic reminding remembering that incident, the opening. And one of the titles that he is given is Tria na Nullan, Tria na Nullan, the Lord of the Isles, Tria na Nullan. And that is an old medieval Gaelic kingship that was created probably about the 10th century. And it's interesting that the Windsor family have, among the many other titles, have taken it to themselves. Prince Charles is the current Tria na Nullan in Scotland. Okay. I really have to move on now because there's a lot. Oh dear. These are just a few examples of the evolution of words that of names in the Irish naming system, and the first one of them that I mentioned here is probably the oldest, and in that first form, this name appears as Dubatuki, the genitive form of it, on a gnome stone. Now, Ogham was a very ancient form of writing that existed in Ireland before the Roman alphabet came with Christianity. It's never been fully dated when exactly Ogham came into being. It was not a very efficient. It was a sort of writing system that would only stretch to names on stone slabs, etc. Very short and to the point messages, but it was not a very easily used alphabet. So it's quite an old one, and this name predates all the other written forms of Irish names, like the ones that are contained in that list as well. And the very first element of a DUB is represented in modern Irish as DUBH, do meaning black, probably referred to the colouring of the man's hair, and the tukos is eventually is reduced. One of the first things that happens, incidentally, notice that the ending of it is not you might expect from a Latin word. It's OS, not US, and it clearly bears more relationship to Gaulish, a Celtic language, than to Latin. So Dubatukos eventually ends up as Duhach. The ending drops out and the C softens to Duhach, Duhach, Dufach, and in English, Duffy. That is probably the oldest name that exists in the Irish naming system. Cahasach comes, there's another element that I haven't talked about. Cah, battle. The spirit of the heroic age is evident in quite a number, particularly male names. So Cahasach is derived from Cah, battle, and Fasach, knowledgeable, battle knowledgeable, maybe a strategic battler or some translation of that sort, and that provides you with O'Cahasy as a surname, which in English is now O'Casey, O'Cahasy. Coal, is the co is as in English co, a joint, gal, foreigner, co-gal, and gives you the English word. It's would be now pronounced coal. The GH, the G have been softened and disappeared. You end up with coal, and that provides you with the surname Coyle in English. Brigitte, again, the endings drop out and soften, and you end up with Breege. Modern spelling, Breege. English, Bridget or Breege. One of the three patron saints of Ireland, Breege, Cholmcille, and Patrick. We've met Art already, McCart, the bear. Art and Gal. Gal meaning energy, gusto, Gal. Art, Gal. Ardgal, eventually ending up as Ardal, and the English surname McArdle. Re, Warden, the elements here are Re, R-I-G, R-I father now, and King, and Bard, poet, and this is a diminutive, and Rewarden, which eventually ends up as Reardan. Common name, and particularly in the south of the country. Afarkach as a first name, personal name, derived from ach, an old word for horse or steed, and markach, meaning a rider, a horse rider. And if you put the two of them together, the ach will cause a shevu aspiration on the markach, so achwarkach ends up as English McCafferty as a surname. And Tuhal, I've already talked about the word Tua, meaning and Tuhal, Tuhal, the word itself, they probably means something leader of the people or something of that sort, and then IN being a diminutive form, and that provides the English name Toland, Toland. Right. I just run through these very quickly. These are all names from the Bible. And you'll notice that that the word in Irish for Johannes from Latin is Owen. The Polish Pope took the name Owen Paul, Johannes Paulus, but in Irish it's Owen Paul. Whereas and names that are borrowed from Norse and French and English, and you get Sean, which is probably the most common name in Irish now that's given English in translation, given as Sean, John, Shan. So there's two names in Ireland that that relate to the word Johannes or John, and one comes from the French derivative of Johannes, which is Jean, ending up as Jean. Irish speakers weren't able to reproduce the j sound, and they replaced it by the sound that they have in their own repertoire of sounds, namely a slender S. So it became Jean, became Sean, Sean, in the north, Shan. So, and as I say in the previous screen, Owen is another word that comes directly from Latin, whereas Sean comes from Latin indirectly via French. Similarly, Seamus is derived from English originally, and if you the English name in question is James, James, which originally would have been a two-syllable word, James, James, and you see how closer to James or to Seamus, James is, and that was the form of the name that gave rise to Seamus in Irish. The rest of these words are either Norse, like Aulif, or Ivar, Ivar, and or French. Okay, let's move again. I'm kind of conscious of we're on a bit of a gallop now to get to the end. Now, a very large number of surnames in Ireland are derived from those personal names that I've been talking at great length about, and they were simply created by prefixing to the personal name the word Mac, which means son, or Nicht, or Ni, which means daughter, and or O, which means grandson or descended from, then followed by the name. And some examples: Mac Lachlan, O'Cahan, very common name in this part of the world, anglicized as O'Kane, O'Cahan. Again, you have the Cach part. McCullough, which in English is McCullough, O'Cannon, Cannon, O'Muelan. Some of them I'll be kind of referring to again later on, but you see the idea. These are names that are based on occupations, which is not as common in Irish as it would be in English. For example, there's quite a few more names that are based on the person's occupation. But here are a few examples. The word Beatach means someone like a civil servant in medieval Ireland who was made responsible, appointed to be responsible for the carrying out of or exercising probably the most the cardinal social virtue of medieval Ireland, and that was hospitality, welcoming people. And his job was, and he was supplied with the required land, etc., to grow the food that would enable him to do this. And he provided food to people who were traveling through the territory of the Taoiseach, or the Lord, the head of the clan, and they would stop and be fed and given hospitality for the night before they moved on. and this was a very important service provided by all people, all the ruling clans throughout the land. And the person, the officer that was in charge of that was a beatach. And the word beatach is based on the word bia, meaning food. So he was the food provider, the vitular. And that gives rise to the surname Mac in English, Beatty, or Macavity, which is usually in English Macvitty. And it's kind of interesting that that name is still very much alive as the international biscuit maker, McVitie's. I think the family are based in Canada now. Their empire, but they originally came from, and the impulse that made them probably one of the better known food providers in the world. The impulse was the social virtue of hospitality and providing for hospitality in Gaelic medieval Ireland. Goa is Smith, the Goa gal and the Goa do. The Goa do meaning the blacksmith, the Goa gal meaning the silversmith, or they dealt in lighter metals. McGowan, I'm dealing with that later on. Interesting, just to remind us that celibacy was not a universal practice in medieval Ireland among the church clergy, hence surnames like MacIntaggart, the son of the priest, MacIntaggart. Ainmneacha is another church office, not entirely, because Taoiseach, the leader of a clan, would have had an Ainmneacha as well, but basically a person who was the steward of the lands belonging to the clan or the church or whatever. Ainmneacha, and that is Macanarcheny, which is Englished to Macanerne. Macateer, the word seer, means a skilled worker, a man. The implication of it, the word seer actually means free, and the quality of his work and whatnot has made him a sort of a free man. Macateer. Macatee, C, is a scholar or a highly informed man. Macatee, the son of the expert. Macan Gaeilge, Gal Oglach is foreign, Gal, and Oglach, soldier. Gal Oglach. Mac Gaeilge is actually, it sounds very like the original. Gaeilge is a name that is you can still find in Fermanagh. Linksach is a mariner, and Mac or O Lynchy is the family name that derives from that, meaning either with a Mac it's McGlinchie, or O, it's O Lynchy, very often without the O, Lynch. Right, let's go on to some nicknames. Blusky is a word that be used to describe someone with an explosive personality, and it's related to the word plesk, which means to explode. So someone who's kind of excitable and given to sort of outbursts would be known as blusky, and that ended up being the root of McVlusky, which is Englished as McCluskey. McCluskey, quite a common name in this part of the world. The original Angar, the short man, was it was a nickname given to one of the ruling O'Neill family in Tyrone, and that gave rise to a new family line, Ainmneacha, the son of the short man, Ainmneacha, which in English is now McGir. Ainmneacha. Brolach means chest. The chest. Brolachan is a diminutive form of that. And both of those words give rise to O'Brolachan, O'Brolly. It's probably someone broad-chested, sturdy kind of build. And what the Brolachan part would be maybe slightly smaller. O'Brolachan. Now, Brolly is hardly changes at all in English. The Brollies of County Derry are still very much alive, and they're very proud of their name. Brolachan has been universally translated as Bradley. It has absolutely nothing to do with Bradley, but there was a large landowner, a planter landowner in County Derry called Bradley. The Bradley is an English name, and as a result of the kind of social pressures people were under, a lot of them adopted the name. The only thing that the two names had in common was the first letter, B, Bradley and Brolachan. Otherwise, they had nothing to do with each other whatsoever. So from Irish to English, the first word that we began with, and I mentioned that it can be pronounced in different ways. Mackie gives you McGee in English, McKee, and Keys. Mackie can be McHugh, Hughes, McKay, or McCoy, and O'Hay, and Hayes. Donnacha can be prefaced with either an O or a Mac, so you can have O'Donnacha or MacDonnacha, and various endings to it, which lead to different forms of the English form of the MacDonagh, Donaghy, and Donahue. Goa, McGowan, gives you McGowan in English, Gowan, Smith, and Smythe. Murchu, Mac and O. The O Murchi ends up as Murphy, and Murchu is the other form. I mentioned the name Tag. And the Mac, the son of Tag, Macaig or Macaig. The English form of it is Macaig, and again a loyalist irony during the Northern Troubles here. There was a very outspoken loyalist frontman in Belfast called John McCaig, and I mean it was and along with most of the people that he was involved in, he would have been not a great fan of Irish, but his name couldn't be more Irish. McCaig, the son of Tag, McCaig, John McCaig. Seer, McAteer, McIntyre, and Freeman, even Freeman. And just the very last point, we've gone over time now. Ciara, I'll just have to refer to you. Have I got another 5 minutes?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, of course. Yeah.
I just want to make this point. After the collapse of Irish society in the early Gaelic society in the early 17th century, the conquest and the Anglicization of Irish life was put on full throttle. Irish was banned from public life and courts and of law and parliament, and it was made very difficult for people to make their way while speaking Irish or bearing an Irish name. So the names were adopted in various ways. Like one of the obvious ways was to drop the O's and the Macs. So McGowan, for example, ended up as Gowan, or Smith, translated entirely. And the names were adopted in various ways to be acceptable. And O's and Macs, as I say, were frequently abandoned. Children were christened names like John, but very frequently would have been referred to within their own family circle as Shan. But they were officially on their baptismal certificate, etc., and all the public certifications surrounding them, they would be known as John. Now, with the name Grania became Grace. Absolutely nothing to do with the word grace. The only link between the two names being that they began with the same letter. And Cork, Finian, the Gaelic name Finian, became Florence. Again, the same reason. E or U became Hugh. Incidentally, the ban on the use of Irish in the law courts and Parliament in Northern Ireland only came to an end just 2 years ago. Just 2 years ago. So the events of and the things that were put in hand in the 17th century had a long reach in Ireland. Now, at the end of the 19th century began a cultural revival in Ireland, which led to eventually a reassertion within people kind of began to develop confidence in themselves as a community again, and this information as kind of was based, a study was based on birth registrations, and in 1866, which was approximately just less than 20 years after the Great Famine in Ireland, which was one of the great depressants in Irish society. It took a long, long time for people to recover from the horror of the famine. So 20 years after, it's 1966, the number of people that used the O form of their name, their surname, was 4%. 4%. And 1890, which was just approximately 20 years after the Great Famine, but the beginning of the cultural revival, that had jumped to 13%. And in 1914, which again was leading up to one of the high points in the development of the cultural revival, it had grown to 20%. 1944, the final statistic, is just 20 years after the development, just slightly more than 20 years after the establishment of the independent republic in Ireland. And by that time, O's had reached 60% of the population. It was kind of an interesting sort of barometer of the self-confidence and sense of identity among the population that that names can reflect. And on those positive and happy words, I'll come to an end. Now, if we have the time and anybody has got any comments they wish to make, now's the time to do it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Maybe there is. Would you check if there is any question?
Okay, so
We are
really very interesting.
Super.
And I know we could have gone on for much longer. We could have gone on for much longer. We're just sort of the tip of the iceberg. Certainly when it comes to, you know, going into the depths of Irish names and surnames and first names. Salvatore, you had a question that you wanted to ask.
I had a question. If there is nobody else that
maybe there is.
I have a question.
Bernadette.
First of all, thank you very much. It was absolutely fascinating. I took in absolutely every word. It was wonderful. Could you tell me, please, the origin of my surname, Delaney?
You need to give me.
Sorry. Sorry about that. I was just too curious.
I think it's Delania, but let me just check.
Thank you.
So, in the meantime, Tommy, you were showing us, you were holding up something. What have you got in your hand? Is that your coat of arms, is it?
It's Dúchlanne, spelt capital O with a fada on it. That's the first. And D-U-B-H, and S, same word, S-H-L, A fada I-N-E. And this book that I mentioned.
Oh, thank you. I'll find it there.
Well, I should have actually drawn attention to the
it's on your slides. If you would like to leave that information, we can pass it on.
All right, and there it is.
We can pass that information on.
Can you see that?
No.
Fantastic.
No.
Okay.
No, you're not sharing your slide. You're not sharing your screen at the moment.
Okay. But I'll do, if I can, I'll just share it for a few moments so people can see that. Sorry about this.
All right. Okay.
Have you got that now?
Yeah.
Yeah. Dúchleine, Dubhshlane, and it suggests that the name has been associated with the area around Slieve Bloom and County Laois. And Dúchleine, it suggests here black of Sloinnte, but I don't know what that means, and I'm not sure. There's a question mark after, so the author was uncertain exactly what the name meant, but that's the form. And at any rate, Dúchleine or Dúchleine.
Thank you very much.
Anyone else?
I wonder if any of our Italian guests, I wonder what their thoughts were on seeing how Irish names, the origins of Irish names, because certainly it struck me when I first came here as quite intriguing how Italian names came about. And I wonder, do you see any parallels between the names that you've just seen and your own names here in Italy?
Maybe Donata, maybe we have bigger part in common when you are talking about names that come from works.
Work, right?
From work,
Yes.
or from natural thing. No, countries like Sardinia, a lot of people has name of animals.
Mm-hmm.
Are you implying that Italians are harder workers than we are?
Are you implying that Italians are harder workers?
Oh, but obviously, no, they are so concerned with work that such a heavy burden that they have to. I was asking, sorry, then we free you and we can go. You can go to have your dinner, but I have just a question, Risteard. Show me at Berla. No, I tell this in English. No, there is any reason why some family developed the Mac, that is son, and some other family or clan developed the O or Ni, that is grandson, or is just casual?
Yeah, well, you see, some personal names became both. Mac means son, and that means a direct descendant of the name, and O means descendant of, but maybe grandson or even further back than that. So it may have been a chronological thing as much as anything else. Huh?
Purely chronological, okay. Brannigan, So,
okay, so we're kind of just conscious of time, so we don't want to be keeping people too late. If we have any, we can see there's some Gurmila Maigid from Eve Gurmaigid, interesting, and I haven't got my glasses on, so I can't actually see. And worthwhile, might be Eve Gurmaigid. Tommy Gurmaigid, Tommy Gurmila Maigid, Daddy Gurmila Maigid, Tommy wants to show us Susanna, very interesting. Gurmaigid, Susanna. Tommy, do you want to share something with us?
Tommy, you are muted.
You're muted, Tommy.
Tom, you're muted. We cannot hear you. You have to unmute.
Thank you, Bernadette. Thank you, Bernadette. Thank Bernadette is saying thank you very much.
No, thank you.
Okay,
Wonderful.
thank you, Bernadette. Thank you.
Gurmila Maigid.
Daddy Gurmila Maigid. Thank you so much. Thank you so